Welcome, everyone. My name is Andrew Petter, and I'm the president of Simon Fraser University, and I have only one task to do in relation to this event this evening, but it's a very happy one, and it's to welcome you to this wonderful Big Ideas for Library event, which is part of SFU Public Square. Now, I want to start by acknowledging that this campus is situated, as are we, on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples. I also want to start by acknowledging that this event is the result of some incredible partnerships and sponsorships, the partnership with the Vancouver Foundation and Simon Fraser University, which I'll talk about a little bit in just a second, but also the sponsorship that we have gained from Van City, from the City of Vancouver, and from the Vancouver Sun, which has made all of this week's SFU Public Square events around our community summit possible. So I want to just explain a little bit, and putting things into context for tonight, why we're here in the general picture, and then others will explain in a more specific way why you're here and what this piece of SFU Public Square and the Community Summit means and what the challenges and opportunities are for this evening. But generally, there are three elements that have brought us here this evening. Three different but related elements. The first element was a strategic vision that Simon Fraser University produced a few months ago after undertaking what it turned out, we didn't know at the time, was in fact going to become one of the most extensive consultations that a university has ever undertaken in Canada to define its strategic vision. And what was unique about it was we not only took the consultation inside the university, but we took it outside the university. And we asked people, we asked our students, our faculty, our staff, we asked our alumni and external stakeholders and the general community, what did you like about Simon Fraser University and how could we make it even better? Now, the answers weren't uniform, but there was a remarkable consistency in that people said what they liked about the university was that it had a kind of special energy. It wasn't like other universities. It was more open. It was more willing to engage with its students, in its research, but most especially in its relationships with external communities. And as a result, we tried to capture that sense and build it into our strategic vision. And the strategic vision sets as one of its goals the fact that Simon Fraser University wants to become and be known as Canada's most community-engaged research university. And that's reflected here in Harbour Centre and the rest of our downtown campus, out in Surrey, and even on Burnaby Mountain, where a community is coming up the mountain to us because we couldn't quite take the entire campus down into the community. So that was influence number one, this notion of an engaged university with a commitment to really engage with the community in a different way, in partnership to help build community and enrich the university at the same time. Now, the second influence was happening over at the Vancouver Foundation. Even as we were going through that process, the Vancouver Foundation, who is our partner in this week's Community Summit, was undertaking its own consultations and asked people in those consultations to identify their source of greatest concern in Metro Vancouver. And I think a lot of people thought that the answer that would come back would be some substantive concern like housing or the environment or health care. And all of those and others were certainly represented in what people said. But what the Vancouver Foundation found was a theme that ran through all of the input and feedback that it received. And that theme was a sense that people had that there was, and I'm going to quote what they said, that in our sprawling metropolis, people felt, quote, fragmented, disjointed, split along economic, ethnic, social, and even geographic lines. In other words, there was a sense of isolation and disconnection in our communities that was fracturing communities, making people feel separated and disconnected. And the Vancouver Foundation identified this issue as a centerpiece for their activities and their work going forward. Well, that then led to the third component in why we're here, and it's really a fusion of the first two. Out of that same strategic vision, we made a commitment as part of our community engagement focus to create what we called in that vision a public square. Now, not necessarily a physical public square, a virtual public square, a place an opportunity or various opportunities in places where people could meet and come together in a way that could join people in community to discuss important issues of the day. In fact, what the vision says is that SFU commits to being BC's public square for enlightenment and dialogue on key public issues, the institution to which the community looks for education, discussion, and solutions. So, taking that commitment together with what the Vancouver Foundation had identified, a natural partnership was formed. The Vancouver Foundation wanted an opportunity and a forum to take what they had found and start a dialogue, a discussion, an engagement with the community about issues of isolation and disconnection. We had a commitment to use our public square to engage the community, which in part responded to the concern, but also provided a platform on which that concern could be played out. And so what has happened is, thanks to some amazing organizational efforts by some very dedicated staff at both the Vancouver Foundation and at SFU, is we've created a week-long community summit on the issues of isolation and disconnection. And to connect with people on those topics, we have organized, jointly with the Vancouver Foundation, an array of different activities. Some of you, I know, were at the big opening at the Orpheum last night, which was a combination of performance and dialogue. This morning there was a youth conference, a poetry reading at lunch, and this evening we have this wonderful opportunity to discuss the role of libraries in addressing issues of isolation and disconnection. And all I want to say, I want to put a little plug in to say that I hope you don't leave here thinking that's the end of it, because if you check in the back of the programs, you'll see there's a few more days of really interesting and exciting opportunities to engage, including a comedy, conspiracy cabaret, a Rain City Chronicles focus on extraordinary citizens who've contributed, even a film festival. I won't go through them all, but just check in the back of the program, because I hope you're going to leave here enriched, but still with a bit of an appetite for some more, and want to take in some of those additional opportunities to explore and engage through all sorts of different medium and venues these issues of isolation and disconnection. Well, I suspect I don't need to spend a lot of time, and I'm not going to try to, convincing people here of the historic and enduring importance of libraries as centers for education, dialogue, and discovery. Libraries, living libraries, have served this role before even the book, since the time when people would gather and share stories so that they could keep and carry forth the knowledge and cultural treasures of their budding civilizations. So the notion of library, the notion of inquiry around knowledge and the sharing of knowledge in libraries, real and virtual, is something that is deeply embedded in our history and in our community. Libraries are, of course, in transition, not so much in turning away from the book, but in accommodating and incorporating a host of revolutionary information technologies. In that transition and in tonight's consideration of big ideas for libraries, we are fortunate to have the leadership of SFU librarian and the Dean of Library Sciences, Chuck Ekman. Let me just tell you a very little bit about Chuck, and then I'm going to turn over the rest of the evening to him and to you. But before coming to SFU, Chuck was the Associate University Librarian at UC Berkeley. He's a strong advocate of open access and other means to make university libraries more open and accessible to the public. He's been a major force within Simon Fraser since I've arrived in opening up library resources, both within the university, but to the broader community as well. In short, he is exactly the kind of librarian that an engaged university needs, and I think he's exactly the kind of librarian to kick off this evening, so I'm going to say no more except to ask you to join me in welcoming Chuck Ekman. Chuck.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you all for coming here this evening. When Andrew arrived at SFU 2 years ago, the SFU librarians were thrilled to hear about his plans for initiating a broad community consultation. In fact, several librarians stepped forward to serve in roles facilitating aspects of that process. As members of this audience well know, community-centered planning is part of the DNA of all librarians. Whether employed in a public library, college library, university library, or other sort of library, we all assess the success of our programs by the extent to which they respond to the needs of the diverse communities that we serve. Tied to this community orientation is a professional inclination among librarians to collaborate. We all know that our potential for success is increased whenever we draw others into our initiatives and projects. And we frequently look beyond our organizational silos to gain knowledge and increase the impact of our work. At SFU, we know that our students, faculty, and staff don't just rely upon the SFU library to support their needs. They rely upon a much larger nexus of libraries and library services. And we also know and embrace the notion that members of the broader community with no formal ties to SFU can and do have needs that can be met by the SFU library. Libraries of all types share a common challenge today. Andrew just alluded to it. The digital revolution has led to really dramatic changes in the modes of creation and dissemination of cultural and scientific knowledge, and how we navigate a new universe of digital books, periodicals, and data. The digital revolution is also changing in profound ways the ways in which our patrons interact and communicate. As librarians, we are all finding new and creative ways to build on our historic strengths, develop new programs, and support communities in the context of these changes. Identifying and surfacing the rapidly evolving needs of our communities and exploring ways to respond together, this is the context for tonight's event. It's about both community and collaboration in the context of change. So I would like to acknowledge some people who have made tonight's event possible before this gets lost in the shuffle. First, Andrew, again, for his leadership in positioning SFU as a community-engaged university, creating the possibilities for conversations just like this. I'd also like to acknowledge Shauna Sylvester, Executive Director of SFU's Public Square, who responded to the library's initial outreach with enthusiasm. She immediately grasped the logic of this concept, and she helped with the concept planning and played a crucial role at various points in the process. So thank you very much, Shauna. Janet Weber, Program Manager at SFU's Public Square Office, provided critical support throughout the planning for this project and made things come together at the crucial moments as well. Karen Maratz, Director of the Bellsburg Library, just around the corner here, you pass it as you enter the building, initiated the conversation with Shauna that led to this event. Karen, who had participated in planning for the National Reading Summit that was held in May this year, saw this concept of the SFU Public Square as a unique opportunity for libraries to insert themselves in an important process. So thanks, Karen. And finally, but not least, Bahrak Youssefi, Director of the Fraser Library at SFU's Surrey campus. I'm just really pleased to say that. I've only been able to say that for 2 months. Bahrak just came to us in July. She returned to us, actually, in July. Bahrak possesses a strong personal philosophy about the difference that libraries can make to the communities that they serve. During the first 2 months of her new role, she conceived of the idea for tonight's event, engaged with professional colleagues across the public and post-secondary library sectors, worked on a huge range of logistical and conceptual details, and in general created the possibility for this important conversation tonight. Did I mention that she did this all in the first 2 months of her new job as director of the Fraser Library at SFU Surrey? I don't know how she did it. So, and then finally, so let me thank finally you for coming here. The event is sold out. We had standing room only. During the elaboration of this event, the response of the community has been uniformly positive. So thank you very much for your spirit and your engagement. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Bahrak and the group.
Thank you very much, Chuck. I have to say it's been a fantastic experience being on the receiving end of the very generous support and encouragement of my colleagues and my boss, especially when I came to them wanting to color outside the lines, or more accurately, throw a box of crayons in their air and run around underneath it. So thank you again. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for being here tonight. My task here is to tell you what is going to happen and I will. But before I do that, I would like you all to do me a favor and take just a couple of minutes. You seriously only have 2 minutes to introduce yourself to someone that's sitting near you whom you do not know. Please. Wow, not a shy crowd? No? Okay, good. Okay, now, tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing our 13 presenters, sitting right there. But before I do that, I just want to take a moment to tell you how we got here this evening. We at the SFU Library think the people at the SFU Public Square are doing some pretty great things, and we wanted to be a part of it. So we asked them to let us do this, and they said, okay. Things can actually be that simple. This is for the librarians in the crowd. My mind was also blown. So we put out a call to you. We were excited, and we love a bit of drama with our language. So we quoted Roberto Bolaño. We said, a library is a metaphor for human beings or what's best about human beings. A library is total generosity. And while it is true that as public institutions, libraries have been historically recognized for their commitment to their communities, it is also true that genuine and sustained community engagement takes dedication, imagination, and openness. And we invited you to forget all about economics and practicalities, and instead of asking why, ask why not. We invited you to embrace your creativity and your brilliance, and we invited you to dream up a project, big or small, realistic or starry-eyed, something completely new. And you did, and they were great, and we are here. We received 24 submissions, and we, myself, and 4 fabulous jury members, locked ourselves up in Shauna Sylvester's office upstairs and chose the 10 exciting projects you're going to be hearing about this evening. For every project, we considered 4 criteria: creativity, innovation, ability to expand our ideas of what and where a library can be, and new ways of engaging our communities. So I'd like to take a moment to thank these fabulous jury members tonight for their hard work and their support of the program. Annette DeFavre, Executive Director of the British Columbia Library Association. Will you do a wave for me, Annette? Okay. Melanie Holden, Chief Librarian, Surrey Libraries. Thank you. Anne Olson, Manager, Policy and Planning, Vancouver Public Library. And Denise Rudnicki, Director of Strategic Engagement, Vancouver Foundation. Thank you. Okay, back to our speakers. Here they are. Each speaker, or co-speaker teams, will have 5 minutes to present their idea. At the 4-minute mark, the lovely Janet Weber will raise a yellow card. At the 5-minute mark, she will raise a blue card, indicating their time is up. I will then come up here, back up here, and introduce the next speaker. All of this will happen whether or not the previous speaker has stopped talking. Okay, I'm now looking for my props here. Give me a moment. Each of you, when you came here this evening, should have received one of these perforated sheets. They are numbered. And each of these numbers correspond to the speakers up here. While you're hearing the presentations, I would like to invite you to write down your thoughts, comments, suggestions for the speakers. These comments will then be given to each speaker as feedback. Once you've said what you had to say on here, we ask that you please put them in the corresponding boxes, which are all lined up on that side of the room right there. Their pictures and numbers are also on the boxes, so this shouldn't be too confusing. And we'll ask you to do that during the break. And yes, there will be a break, and there will be food, so that's good to know. Perhaps you love their idea so much that you want to hear more about it if it were to become a reality. Perhaps you want to lend a hand, whatever, write it down. Give them your contact information. You're not signing up to do anything, I promise. It's just to say, maybe I'd like to hear about this again. You also have a voting card. I'm also now going to look for that prop right here. There we go. My 3 favorite ideas are feedback card, voting card. Okay, at the end of the presentations, and this should take us somewhere to about 7:30, I will come back up here and tell you about the voting process, invite you to take a short break, and enjoy the delicious snacks I've already mentioned. And after we've all voted and ate, we'll come back and we'll announce the winners of the evening, and we'll wrap up. Sound good? Okay, great. Let's get started. Okay, our first project, Sarah Grant and Cindy Hill. Sarah first fell in love with public libraries at the ripe old age of 4 when she found a picture book about a little blue train climbing a steep mountain against all odds. Fast forward to 2012, and Sarah is now the manager of youth services for Surrey Libraries, a career children's librarian, and an avid book pusher who's committed to finding just the right book for all the 4-year-olds and their families in Surrey. Cindy started her journey in the world of art as toddler with glitter, finger paints, and the occasional lick of paste. Fast forward to 2012, and Cindy's gregarious nature and love of community development has led her to become a fundraising goddess of the Surrey Libraries with a passion for literacy, children, and the arts. Please welcome Sarah and Cindy Hill.
This on?
Yes.
Okay, so hands up if you have a favorite book that you may not have read in years, but it sits nonetheless on your shelf because it's become a part of who you are and you can't bear to part with it. Okay, so as a career children's librarian and mother of 2,
mother of 2 teens and a cat,
you can imagine just how full our living room shelves are. Yes, we borrow books from the public library by the bagful, what feels like every week, but still we seem to have amassed quite a large pile of books in the living room. My daughter, Heather, she's just started grade 3, and she's done with Runaway Bunny, and she's done with Goodnight Moon, and she's done with Curious George. She's even done with Duffel Bunny.
our favorite was Chrysanthemum, Chrysanthemum, Chrysanthemum.
Well, these days in the evenings, you'll find us cuddled up in the living room reading aloud from Harry Potter in the evenings.
Or my teens are captivated by the Game of Thrones while they're hermited away up in their bedrooms.
But alas, it's time for us to burp our homes, or else we risk drowning under books.
Mm-hmm. Now, hands up if you could part with some of those books, if you knew for sure that the next family would get as much joy from them as you did. Ooh, yeah.
What you need is to build a book-sharing box.
And just to up the ante, we say let's make a party of this project.
So at the library, we know books, and we know people. And what we want to do is nourish connections in literacy through the building of these little library boxes.
So what is a free little library, you ask? Imagine joining a workshop at your local library where community groups, the arts community, they come together and they build these little library boxes. They're sustainable library boxes, and each will represent the uniqueness of the neighborhood.
It's inspired by the take a book, leave a book model of the little library that could, where community members build, decorate, stock, and maintain little library boxes in their neighborhoods.
And to inspire these mini libraries, with the flavor of each community, the library would put a call out to local artists and craftspeople to help the community groups so that the book boxes are designed to reflect the neighborhoods in which they live.
These mini libraries can live in suburban neighborhoods, in city centers, even along country roads. Imagine for a minute a family borrowing picture books from a little library that was near their early years center.
Or maybe you might see pet owners who put out a box at a local off-leash dog park, and it's stocked by the local pet store.
Or you might find a green box in a community garden that recycles gardening books.
Or how about a cedar box built by Aboriginal elders with an Aboriginal motif for the design?
Yes,
yeah, the possibilities are endless.
So, in a wired world, these little free libraries would build community and connect neighbors through great books
That are currently clogging up your living rooms.
So visit the little free library at the end of your street. It's open 24/7. You don't need a library card, and the borrowing rules are simple. Take a book, leave a book.
You can add a bench or flowers. It'll become a destination in the neighborhood.
Or it'll be just a dash of art and whimsy to your daily walk. The experience of building these little free libraries will bring together and build upon the common interests of community members who care about books, the arts, sharing, and neighbors.
The community will reap the benefit of this harvest.
For years
to
come. So in parting, we would like to offer to share with you a book to the first 3 people who can show us your library card. No, they're not new books, but I think it's time for us to part with them. Oh, okay, there's one for you. Oh, here's one over here. Okay. Who was next? Why is that? Were you next? There you go.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, our next speaker is Kevin Stranick. Kevin is a consultant to the Public Knowledge Project at the Simon Fraser University Library. He works with editors, publishers, software developers, and librarians from around the world, helping them to find open source solutions to their information technology and online publishing requirements. Kevin received his Master of Library and Information Studies from UBC in 2002 and is about to wrap up a Master of Adult Education from the University of Regina. Please welcome Kevin.
All right, thank you. Cut it out. So tonight I'm going to talk about, really quickly, in 5 minutes, my proposal for an open online course to foster digital participation in our communities. So you'll remember in the early days of the web, when you first went online, most of us would go and access the wealth of content that was becoming available. But it had a troublesome aspect, right? There were many people, we discovered, who didn't have the skills to really enjoy that environment, or who didn't have the technology to make use of it. And it was this group of people, it was libraries who were on the forefront of figuring that out. I can see some people I know who played a role in helping fix that. They built technology spaces in their libraries. and they had learning opportunities for people to come in and figure out how to find information and how to evaluate that information. Public libraries as well as academic libraries. But the web's changing, and it's changing fast. And while those efforts at fighting that digital divide were very successful in a lot of ways, there's new things happening. The rise of Web 2.0 and tools like blogs and Twitter and wikis and YouTube and Facebook, it all means that the web's no longer just about the consumption of information, but now it's becoming about the production of information. We go online to create things, to make stuff, to interact with people, to share things. We write blog posts, or we write our own encyclopedia entries. We make and share movies to try to influence the political process. But this participation requires a new skill set, and without it, we face a new digital divide, a participation divide. These skills are becoming critical for actively participating in emerging ways of doing work, of scholarship, of entrepreneurship, of art, and of citizenship. To challenge this participation divide, libraries need to, again, take the lead in building broader digital literacy skills in their communities. Some of these skills are, of course, how to find information, how to organize it, understand it, evaluate it, analyze it, and question it. But it's also about how to create, how to remix things that are there, how to share, how to connect with other people online, how to publish, how to give attribution to work that you find, and how to manage your own identity. So one option could be for each library to go out and create its own digital literacy classes. But I'd like to propose a collective solution. I'd like to propose that we bring together people from academic libraries, public libraries, school libraries from across Vancouver, from across Metro, across BC, across Canada, across the world. Big, right? Big. And to do this, we could build a Mooc, a digital literacy Mooc. A Mooc is a massive online open course. They're massive because you can have thousands of learners involved at the same time. They're open because anybody can participate for no cost. They're online because it's all on the web, and they're a course because they've got that kind of familiar structure. And there's 3 different kinds of Moocs, and I'm going to talk about them in like 30 seconds each, because there's different aspects that are interesting. The one kind of Mooc that maybe you've heard about in the press at MIT and Stanford, they're getting lots of press, are what are considered content Moocs. And a good example is Coursera. I saw this morning UBC's, another Canadian university, to participate in this. And they're interesting because they're big and they're free, but they also have some shortcomings. They're a little bit old-fashioned in their pedagogy. They sort of rely on canned quizzes and video lectures. I think there's something we can do here. There's another kind of Mooc too, though. There's a network Mooc. And these are less on content and more about connecting people and helping people build their own personal learning networks. I participated in one at the University of Regina. There's also something called project Moocs, where people go out and they make things together online, digital projects. Digital Storytelling 106 is a great example of that, where students submit their own ideas for assignments. It breaks down that student-teacher differential. They even created a radio station as part of a course. So we could talk about making a digital literacy Mooc. And it would cover important content, but it would also help people build networks, and it would help them build some really cool projects. It's a course that could be collaborative between different kinds of libraries. It could welcome learners from all different kinds of libraries, adults, teens, but it could also be involving library staff. It could involve local businesses. They could send their employees. We could talk to continuing studies departments, and they could offer it for credit. So we need to facilitate creativity, active participation, and experiment with innovative pedagogy. So if you're interested, let's talk.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, next we have Carrie Christensen to talk about Art Van. Carrie is a printmaker who lives in East Van. Her first, second, and third jobs were all in libraries. Please welcome Carrie Christensen.
I just want to clarify, I currently do not work in a library. I hope that's all right. Hi, everyone. My proposal is called the Art Van. Oh, there it is. It works on one idea, and that is, I believe everyone should have access to original works of art. Just to clarify, I think there's a difference between original works of art and reproductions, or poster art. Poster art, while pretty, isn't quite the same. When you're looking at original art, whether it's a sculpture, or a print, or a painting, it has the brush strokes, it has the smudges, it has all those imperfections that make it one of a kind. And when you're standing looking at it, you know you're standing in the same spot that the artist was when she or he created it. And there's a certain kind of magic there. Now let's talk for a second about the impact of art. People connect around art. It reminds them of a certain place or time. Sometimes it even gives them a place to connect with each other. Art also makes you think. This very Banksy-esque graffiti I saw in a parking garage downtown. People like to figure art out. They like to look at it and discern whether or not they like it. They like to see if they can figure out what the artist was trying to say. And sometimes, art just makes you laugh. People in Vancouver engaged so much with this temporary sculpture that someone bought it and donated it to the city so it could stay and so that joy could continue. Now, one thing all of these artworks have in common is that they're free. They're also all local, but most importantly, they're free. You don't have to pay to see them. It's an important point. There is indeed a lot of art in Vancouver. Think about the Vancouver Art Gallery or the East Side Culture Crawl. There's also free access to art here. Take the Rennie collection, for example, which charges no admission. But here's the problem with all of those. Art isn't cheap. Galleries can be expensive for a family to attend altogether, with admission fees and parking or transit. Same with the sculptures I showed you. Someone actually has to take you there. You have to get there somehow. Lots of people find galleries intimidating as well, and that can be an obstacle. And lastly, the joy that you get from a gallery is fleeting, in my opinion. It's always better to be standing in front of the Mona Lisa than it is to be talking about standing in front of the Mona Lisa. Now, I'm lucky. When I was growing up, I had original art at home. My grandmother was a painter, and seeing her art inspired me. It inspired me to be creative, and it inspired me to dream. You can fall into great art the same way you do a great book. It shapes you, it molds you, and it becomes part of the fabric of your life. So, if you're temporarily energized, or somehow engaged, or inspired when you're out looking at a piece of art like this one, how much is that feeling amplified when it's in your house and you get to look at it every day, several times a day? That brings us to this. What is Art Van? Simply put, Art Van is a mobile art library that also functions as a tiny gallery. Visualize a food truck, but instead of having food to nourish your body, it has art that feeds your soul. It's mobile, so it can connect people in different communities. One weekend it could be at the Trout Lake Farmers Market, the next weekend it could be at Vanier Park. It's mobile, so it can go anywhere in the city, anywhere people meet and congregate. How does it work? It collects and distributes art. Lots of people, not just artists, have original art that's in their closet or in storage somewhere, waiting to be seen and appreciated again. Maybe you've moved and you don't have room anymore. If the art van rolled up nearby, you could bring out your ready-to-hang pieces and either donate them or simply exchange them. The best part of all is, people who can't afford gallery admission or they can't afford to buy original art will have access to the art van. And guess what? This is for the librarians out there. Unlike a book, this art has no pesky due date. Once you've selected your gem, you can bring it back and exchange it at a later date, or if you've fallen in love, it's yours to keep. Awareness of the art van could be spread by reaching out to arts organizations, by creating a simple website, and by employing social media tools. Tweeting upcoming art van locations would be an easy way to generate excitement. There's a benefit in here for participating artists as well. Posting images of donations and information about the artist would not only encourage donations, but it would also offer them exposure. And what artist doesn't appreciate a little exposure? Okay, so to summarize, art enriches lives, number 1. 2, everyone should have access to free art. And number 3, vote for the art van. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Next, we have Dale Mccartney. Dale, once an employee of such noted retail establishments as Chapters and IKEA, has a BA and MA in Canadian history with a focus on labor issues. He is currently precariously employed as a sessional instructor at Simon Fraser University. Please welcome Dale Mccartney.
This pedestal is really going to interfere with my pacing. It's not... All right. Okay, 5 minutes. So, good evening, and thank you for having me here to talk about my big idea for libraries. Shockingly, from my intro, I want to talk about work and how I think libraries can help workers. And so I want to give a little bit of background about what work is like in BC right now. Probably most of you know this, but in BC today, the overwhelming majority of people are employed in the service sector, about 80% of British Columbians. There's a wide range of quality in these jobs, but it's important to understand that a large number of British Columbians are working in the worst jobs in the service sector. In fact, as you can see from this, my fancy graph, my graphics are not as good as the last couple. More people actually work in retail and wholesale trade and accommodation and food and beverage today than work in all of the goods-producing jobs in the economy. The workers in these jobs at the bottom of the economy, at the bottom of the service sector, are among the most exploited in our society. They receive some of the lowest wages in our economy. And in fact, this graph, which I'm going to leave up there for a while so you can really consider it, this graph dramatically underplays this effect because it's based on a 40-hour work week, which most service sector workers don't get. On top of low wages, service sector workers are denied benefits. They're more often victims of illegal actions by their employers, including, of course, sexual harassment, withholding of wages, denial of overtime, and unsafe working conditions. And this situation gets worse when we consider that these workers are disproportionately older or younger workers, or new Canadians, all groups that struggle to defend their legal rights. I know from my classes teaching labor studies at SFU that many people are very confused about employment law, which makes them very easy targets for this kind of exploitation. Unions also have less impact in this sector than they do in most sectors, and that's for a lot of reasons, but only about 13% of retail workers are in unions today, and only about 9.5% of food and beverage workers. So, things are clearly bad for a significant chunk of workers in BC, and you might ask, what does this have to do with libraries? Well, if libraries are about community, and that's what we've been hearing tonight, I think, and I agree with, of course, I think they are, I think it's important for us to recognize that these workers are a significant part of the community of BC today. In fact, in my opinion, they're the community libraries are meant to serve. While wealthier British Columbians can spend their way into communities of consumption, these workers need public services and public spaces to help build the kinds of community that libraries specialize in: warm, inviting, intelligent, knowledgeable, and socially engaged. Which leads me to my idea. Because libraries are outside of corporate culture, they're perfectly placed to build centers for community organizing for these workers. I'm imagining something like a service workers resource center, based on a model that exists in other places, including Manitoba. These centers would be in central branches of libraries, but in neighborhood branches too. And each center would provide access to information about the law and workers' rights, and what to do when your rights are being abused. It would provide this information in multiple languages in an attempt to empower the most vulnerable of workers in our economy, which are, of course, new immigrants. It would also provide very valuable knowledge that's not as widely available. Things like job boards, information about housing and tenancy rights, education and training opportunities, and maybe even information about unions. But beyond that, these centers could be places for workers to share knowledge that has no other public forum. For example, a place for them to share their wage rates. It's hard for workers to know who in the sector is paying the best wages, and even the simple act of sharing what you get paid empowers employees to demand more. Workers can also share information about bad employers to steer workers away from them until they reform their behavior. And all of this would empower workers as individuals when they enter the labor market to organize a better position in their lives. But I actually think these centers could do something much more than that. What I'm talking about here is a chance for workers to organize and build a community as workers. By building this connection, libraries can help to make much larger social change in BC. When service workers recognize the broad base of the population that they represent, they'll recognize they have real social and political power. Now, I think libraries should take this on because it fits their mandate and because it would make Vancouver a better place for the 22% of Vancouverites who work in these jobs. But I do labor studies, and we listen to economists a lot, and they talk about rational self-interest and such things. So I thought I would finish up by talking a little bit about why I think this might benefit libraries. And it's a little bit cynical, but I hope you'll come with me here. I'm not an expert on libraries, but I would assume that in this time of austerity budgets, they're probably facing funding cuts just like the rest of public services. And it's important for us to understand, as any historian in Canada can tell you, the root of those public services was prolonged demand by a broad base of workers in Canada. And so resource centers like the one I'm talking about are going to empower workers. But they're also going to make libraries an essential service for these workers who will then, in turn, use that power to hopefully build more public space. Thank you for your 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Dale. Next, we have Tara Robertson. Tara is passionate about libraries. Her day job as accessibility librarian at SILS helps keep her in Fluvox shoes. She's an organizer in many senses of the word. Please welcome Tara.
So, where are you from? Did you grow up in Vancouver? How long have you lived here? These are pretty common questions. For most of us, who we are is tied to a sense of place. I was born in Vancouver, but I didn't grow up here. I'm going to talk about digitization. I think it can create three important connections. First, digitization can create connections from the past to the present, between content and place, and probably most importantly, I think it can create connections between people in the community. And I think the library can be a catalyst for this. There's a huge opportunity for libraries in working with communities in meaningful ways to create meaningful local digital collections. It's also possible to do this in a way that will create opportunities for people to participate. This photo is from a grad from the Professional Photo Imaging program at Langara College. So New York Public Library is definitely the leader in digital collections in public libraries. The Historical Menu Collection is a great example of crowdsourced metadata or community cataloging. The website is a place for people to get involved, and it also creates evangelists who are passionate about the collection. The barrier for entry is really low. You don't need to create a login to assign metadata, check other people's work, or fix mistakes. Also, the content is really interesting. At McCreary's Big Top, you could get a tomato sardine sandwich with crisp lettuce for only 55 cents. The platform that they built was informed just as much by the process they wanted to facilitate as well as the outcome. By leveraging community effort, they're able to build a database of specific dishes, something that wouldn't be possible just from OCR. So this is a photo of my maternal grandpa. My memory of him is completely tied to the orchard in West Bank, just outside of Kelowna. The people and places that I love are completely connected and layered in the timeline of my memory. I don't think this is unusual. For me, photos of neighborhoods, buildings, and people are really interesting. It's also a digitization, storage, and archiving problem that most people have. Libraries could help solve this problem by building a platform for these digitized versions of our treasured memories. Perhaps libraries could also be a physical repository of some of the photos once they've been digitized and cataloged. Also, with gentrification, the face of Vancouver is quickly changing. I know that some community groups and individuals are out documenting, but without institutional support behind this, the information will be lost when people move, their computer crashes, or they die. I'd like to see the community be involved in making the design decisions about the platform and the metadata that will be collected. Of course, this will differ depending on the collection. While I think photos of neighborhoods, buildings, and people are interesting, different communities might have different priorities. So there's two architects coming after me. Fire insurance maps, if you didn't know, are really interesting sources of what was where in a city. Annabelle Vaughn, a designer and graduate architect, told me about how a planner mapped the phone directory names onto the fire insurance maps in Mount Pleasant. He noticed that along 6th Avenue, the street that overlooks Great Northern Way, where the Great Northern Way campus is, that most of the family names were Japanese. He figured out that Japanese Canadians lived there and moored their fishing boats right by their houses. Back then, the water came up to that level. So by layering and mapping this information, we're able to get a much different view of our city and our history. I particularly like the parts where history and memory are contested and don't match up. So if we take Google Maps, layer on the fire insurance maps, add the phone directory data, we have a rich grid of information on which to place photos. So someone's kind of already done that, just with Google Maps and photos. Whatwaswhere.com ties historical photos to Google Maps, allowing you to tour familiar streets to see how they appeared in the past. The last thing I think that's really important is getting the collections out in public spaces, like at bus stops or on buses, or visible in neighborhoods. In my cataloger's mind, I imagine people tagging images while waiting for the bus. This may or may not happen. Perhaps strangers might even talk to each other about the images that they're seeing in their neighborhood. Again, it's Vancouver, so this may or may not happen. I really like what Mike Ridley from the University of Guelph had to say about libraries occupying a third space, a space that is not home or work. He argued that there's an opportunity for libraries to be a digital third space. As a trusted, non-commercial actor with expertise in organizing information and curating collections, libraries are perfectly positioned to be the catalyst for preserving local memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. So I lied, and I'm totally not cutting people off. Okay. Next we have... You all cut off. No, I'm just Next we have Daniel Irvin and Matthew Bowel, the 2CD Library on Libraries, Democracy, and Private Side of Public Space. I just realized this is the first title I read out. I apologize. There's really... I don't know why I did that. Daniel is a graduate of UBC School of Architecture. He lives in Vancouver and is currently an intern at Principal Architecture. Matthew is also a graduate of UBC School of Architecture. He has in the past spent time in the nonprofit sector. He's a big fan of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and libraries. Here to present their talk is Daniel Irvin. Please welcome Daniel Irvin.
So we flipped a coin and one of us lost. So I'm going to present. Libraries have long functioned as critical institutions of democratic life and civic engagement. In their mandate of facilitating access to knowledge and exchange of ideas, libraries support civic discourse and freedoms of expression and information, all the while defending the privacy of their users. While free information and freedom of expression have come to be commonplace in the digital society, other democratic rights, namely the freedoms of association and assembly, have become increasingly eroded. Free association and assembly, that is, the rights of individuals and groups to meet and to exchange ideas and information without fear of corporate intrusion or undue government oversight, are threatened not only by the deficit of publicly accessible space and the rampant privatization of the urban realm, but also by the emerging climate of digital tracking and government surveillance. Since the democratic mission of the library is already to provide space for the protection of civil liberties, we're proposing to extend this mandate to address the modern demand for public space. The 2CD Library, named for Articles 2C and 2D of the Charter, would enable the library to provide greater support for the right to free speech, civic assembly, and privacy of association in an era where these rights are difficult to preserve. Conceived as a series of dispersed public spaces, spatially proximate and programmatically linked to the resources of the library, the 2CD Library would provide publicly accessible but privacy-conscious spaces for assembly and exchange. So by way of exploring some of the ideals that we see of the 2CD Library, we want to suggest a few examples of how this institution might be situated in the space of the city. The 2CD Library could, first of all, involve a distributed network of private digital access kiosks. Located so as to exploit the accessibility and publicness of existing spaces, these would exist to support private virtual assembly and association, providing secure, anonymous access to the resources of the library, as well as providing training in privacy control and data security. Secondly, the 2CD library could include a network of publicly accessible private rooms. These could be integrated with popular public facilities or could incorporate new amenities of their own. By encouraging crowds and leveraging the anonymity that the crowd brings, entry and exit from the rooms could remain discreet. These meeting rooms would be connected to the library both by secure digital access as well as private document delivery, and could be staffed by confidential resource workers. Soundproofed and shielded against near and remote surveillance, these secure rooms would allow the public to meet in small groups and to connect to digital resources without their privacy being impinged upon by unwanted monitoring or intrusion. Finally, the 2CD library could also support large assembly precincts. While outdoors and ostensibly open to all scrutiny, by virtue of their adjacency to a library facility, these spaces would nevertheless reside within the library's democratic watch. In the event that the public's freedom to speak or to gather freely is compromised by unwarranted surveillance, the library would be able to equipmentally extend its institutional protection over the public space. A network of digital transmission poles, for example, installed to the public space could, when needed, activate the library's protection. By generating electromagnetic noise to inhibit cell phone ID sniffing or emitting infrared strobe flashes to disrupt the exposure metering and autofocusing of digital cameras, this variation on the V-pole would hinder any preemptive surveillance or any predatory collection of information. Now, granted, we've explored the idea of the 2CD library through a series of explicitly architectural speculations. But these are just examples, and that's only because we're architects and this is what we do. The 2CD library could just as easily be developed as a set of library policies, or as an education program, or an iPhone app. The principle of the 2CD library is that along with the spectator space of the so-called public square, as vital as that is, a robust and civic democratic realm also requires spaces for citizens to privately assemble and to speak freely amongst themselves, a private public. And we want to suggest that the protection of this sort of fundamental right aligns with the civic trajectory of the library, and that it advances the library's role as one of the central institutions of democratic society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danny and Matthew. Next, we have Ms. Shirley Liu. Shirley is the coordinator of library systems and technical services at Vancouver Community College. She became a librarian because of her love of books and reading. Please welcome Shirley Liu.
Thanks. That was really cruel timing. This is a low-tech presentation in a lot of ways. My big idea for how libraries can help build community is by selling books. I don't mean the sale bins with discarded materials. I mean opening a permanent space in libraries with display shelves and cash registers for the purpose of selling new books. Before I talk about this idea a bit more, a quick look at what's happening in the book industry in Canada. Whoops. The library is open. When American discount giant Target opens 125 locations across Canada in the spring of 2013, many estimate that it will be the second largest bookstore chain in the country. Costco is not far behind with 84 locations in Canada and a similar book-selling strategy. Bestsellers stocked in very large quantities and deeply discounted. With over 240 locations, Canada's largest bookstores chain is Chapter's Indigo. It's currently rebranding itself as a lifestyle store for book lovers, shrinking its inventory of actual books in favor of everything from yoga mats to picture frames. As Chapter's executive Deirdre Horgan explains, it's about enriching our customers' lives in ways beyond reading. Yeah, that had to go in there. Amazon's Kindle was introduced 5 years ago and altered book selling and publishing forever. By its 4th year, the reported ebook sales had surpassed those of hardcovers and paperbacks combined. Apple shifted the market yet again with the iPad. These devices and their associated control of content shut out traditional bookstores. The net result is predictable. The Canadian Booksellers Association estimates that 300 independent bookstores have closed across the country in the past decade. Pages Books in Toronto, known for its diverse selection and its support of local small presses, closed in 2009 after 30 years in business. At its height, Duthie Books had 8 locations in Vancouver. After 52 years of book selling in the city, it shut down its last location in 2010. Most recently, Book Warehouse shut down all but one of its locations after 32 years in business. They sold over 10 million books in that time. Compounding the various competitive pressures, rent increases were also a factor in the demise of these bookstores. With these 3 closures alone, we've lost over 110 years of bookselling experience and service in our communities. What else has been lost? For the consumer, maybe very little. Bestsellers are cheaper than ever, and finding almost any book online is easy. If saving time and money were all that mattered, we've never been better off. But there is a loss. Communities and their citizens lose. We lose the sense of place and diversity created by independent bookstores. We lose a sense of possibility in a society that can't support locally owned small businesses. Publishers and writers lose as they face a market that rewards blockbusters, but not alternative voices or ideas. We lose a space in the community where you can go and experience the thrill of finding something you didn't know you were searching for and having it become part of your life. Every bookshop closure creates a hole in our communities. There are reports that Amazon plans to open a boutique storefront in Seattle with highly selected stock, including real books. Are the holes left in our communities going to be filled with small-scale versions of big corporations? Obviously, they see an opportunity. Instead of watching it happen, I think libraries should seize the opportunity. We could create spaces for selling books in our communities, and we have compelling reasons to do so. We have the space in rent-controlled buildings. We know how to buy and talk about books. We have the space. We aren't constrained by the need to turn a profit in order to survive. We would sell books to support writers, publishers, and reading in Canada. So this is not a traditional business venture, but an extension of our service. It would operate on a cost recovery basis and be self-sustaining. The inventory would highlight books from local and Canadian publishers and writers and reflect a range of voices across social, cultural, political, economic, and artistic spectrums. It will be a jumbled, loud, chaotic collection that will compel people to stop and look and engage with one another. In response to a Target location opening in the same mall as his bookstore in Winnipeg, Paul McNally of McNally and Robertson Books said, "Our cultural industries need a zone of protection, certainly more than potash does." Libraries in Canada can and should be that zone. By opening a new kind of bookstore, libraries have the potential to reclaim lost community spaces.
Next, we have Justin Unruh. Justin is a librarian for the young who cringes at stories with morals. Unless the moral is, take things apart and make them better, which he totally can get behind. Please welcome Justin Unruh.
All right. I'm Justin Unruh, and my big idea for public libraries is that they should embrace the role of your friendly neighborhood wretched hive of scum and villainy. To begin, and to situate us here, I agree with R. David Lankes when he says the mission of librarians is to facilitate knowledge creation in their communities. That's a great mission, but I think it's very easy for us to misdefine our communities. I want my library, and this is a hypothetical library, I'm not representing anyone's views but my own here, to serve the community it's in, and not the rules of publishers, movie studios, or lawmakers. In short, I want librarians to talk like pirates. See, September 19th here is internet traditionally known as International Talk Like a Pirate Day. It's a stupid internet thing, but I could not resist the chance for this here. See, I want libraries to make it easier to share all sorts of electronic content and integrate better with how people actually use the internet. And that includes breaking all sorts of rules. I'll be talking about collections, programming, and a bit of philosophy for the next 4 minutes. First, we've got the plunder of libraries, our collections. When we talk piracy, I mean that I want libraries to buy material and then share it as widely as possible instead of treating digital content like it's physical. This is the kind of behavior that content providers don't want from us. And because of that, and so as a result, we are saddled with 26 checkouts, then an ebook self-destructs, or you can download 3 songs a week. I want us to buy ebooks and crack the DRM on them so that they can be used on any device. When we buy CDs or DVDs or Blu-rays, I want us to rip them to hard drive arrays and seed the torrents ourselves. If we're serious about facilitating knowledge creation, giving away these electronic files is way more useful than making them hard to use. Now, this picture here is of a pirate box and a model of what I want libraries to encourage. In that pirate box is a battery-powered Wi-Fi router. You can kind of see the antenna on the right-hand side there, and a USB stick full of download-only media. You can put that anywhere, and someone can connect to its network and get information, connecting the local space around the box here with electronic content. And yeah, no, I love these things, and they're kind of the electronic equivalent of Sarah and Cindy's little free libraries here. But we're also here to talk about community. And one of the things about internet media piracy is the isolation aspect of it. We know we're not supposed to be downloading complete seasons of Clone Wars and feel a little ashamed doing it by ourselves in the dark. When I show people how easy it is to make their Kindle books readable on a Kobo, or strip the stuff from digital library content that, returns it, people are amazed. We're taught that we have to follow the rules, but when you talk about breaking the rules, you're engaging with people in a different kind of illicit connection here. I want the library to be a place where you can talk about this stuff freely, that it's not some back alley of information usage you should never mention to a fine, upstanding librarian. I want librarians who are comfortable with 4chan and torrenting and can help their community members navigate some of these parts of the internet to have some fun, or learn something, or, bring down an evil empire. So my library does programs teaching people about the processes and ethics of seeding and leeching torrents, the Pirate Bay in the middle there, about how to use Tor to hide what exactly you're doing from people who might be of a mind to prosecute you, and how to use VPNs to get around location restrictions so we can watch those shows on Hulu, god damn it. Because I love the pirate box thing, we'd run workshops on how to build them and share so people could share their own content, stuff they've stolen or created themselves, outside of the library ecosystem. Because really, libraries aren't the point here. We're trying to facilitate knowledge creation, not pump up our circulation stats. Establishing trust within your community that being an outlaw doesn't make you a bad person plays into the whole idea that to live outside the law, you must be honest. And I couldn't find a Lego cover of Blonde on Blonde there. That's something, sorry. When we teach our community about those tools that people use to engage in piracy, we also get to talk about intellectual property rights, supporting local artists. Why do people use Creative Commons in the first place? And privacy, and all that good Electronic Frontier Foundation stuff. And we aren't doing it from a position of on high false moral rectitude, but from down in the muck, in a we're all in this together kind of way. Loads of people aren't going to buy media anyway, but that doesn't mean the library can't be a place to get them to share their knowledge. So our final choice is to let people be bound by terrible rules, cough, cough, access copyright, enforced by publishing empires, or we can become outlaws. At the opening gala last night, Larry Beasley talked about how the law is a manifestation of us, and we should be crafting new laws to build what we want to see ourselves in. I think librarians should be allying themselves with the upstarts in their seedy cantinas who might do some crappy things and shoot first occasionally, but end up changing the galaxy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, next we have Alison Campbell and Michelle Callahan. Michelle, while they're setting their stuff out there, I'm just going to introduce them. Michelle is the Capilano Assistant Branch Manager / Children's Librarian at North Vancouver District Public Library. She graduated from U of T with a Master of Library and Information Studies and a Master of Criminology. Michelle is a member of NVDPL's Social Inclusion Implementation Team and is passionate about involving community members, particularly teens, in planning library programs. Alison is the Outreach Coordinator for Children and Teens at North Van District Public Library. She has a Master's of Library and Information Science from UBC and has been a children's librarian for over 20 years. Alison is also a member of MVDPL's Social Inclusion Implementation Team and thinks public libraries are the best thing ever. Please welcome Alison Campbell and Michelle Callahan.
We're children's librarians, so we have props and story time voices.
So, Allison, I've been reading all these books and I've been watching videos, but I just can't seem to knit anything. Do you have a way of connecting me to someone who could teach me how to knit?
This sounds like a job for the community pod. This is our little big idea for libraries and communities.
So you can see this is our community pod idea. And we're going to get into the details just in a bit. Ooh, there you go. So, our concept of the pod is that we would like to add and include you, as a resource to the library, but don't worry, we won't shelve you our library. So, these are simple things, big or small, things that we could teach you how to do. For example, do you know how to knit? Do you know how to can peaches? Is this something that you would like to learn? And is there something that you can teach someone, big or small? How about taking a great picture? How about Bhangra dance? Are these any things that you would... Oh, that would be good. Could you hear me in the back or no? Oh, you could. Okay. Oh, I see. That's good. So, whoopsies. So wouldn't it be great to get together with people in your community, to meet up with folks in your community to share knowledge? Well, this is our idea behind the community pod, the place where these things can happen, where we can connect people in the community.
Okay, so the library provides a welcoming, safe place where people can connect, learn, and share their experiences with others in their communities. The community pod is the flexible space within the library where these connections happen. Using a bulletin board concept, people can ask, offer, and browse. And who knows how the pod might inspire you to get involved.
So a lovely co-worker of ours at the Capilano Branch Library created this miniature model of the community pod And you can see the walls are very flexible, there's movable sectional seating, and there's an area for an intranet hub in the very middle. And you can see it's a small space within the library, the community pod. We wish it were bigger now because we didn't realize there would be this many people.
So, I sometimes go walking down Lonsdale and I see these great Persian bakeries and they look so, there's some interesting stuff in there, but I'm kind of shy. I don't want to go in. I was wondering if there was someone who could maybe, come with me and show me what's in there and what to do with it when you get it home, because I'm not exactly sure what to do. So,
well, Allison, that is a great question, and we have something that could help you. What we can do with our lovely community pods is, I can make a little notice like this, would like to learn about Persian bakeries, and I can attach it here, post it right up on our bulletin board within the community pod, and we connect Allison with someone who could teach her all about Persian baked goods, one-on-one.
I do a little switcheroo.
So, make sure I talk to the mic. There we go. So, we think of it as
Craigslist with a human face.
That's right. So, librarians and libraries are the perfect place where we can make this happen. We can get involved, connect people, and facilitate as much or as little as one would need. Basically, we're there to get the ball rolling, and then you can take it from there. Or if you really need our help in connecting with people, that's what we can do for you.
Okay, so library staff, connecting people and ideas, that's what we do. And we'll listen to the community pod will change and evolve depending on what our community needs and wants, because they're the experts. We listen and respond to their needs.
Basically, libraries in the 21st century, and this is something that's come up during the talks, that libraries are all about being a visible symbol of connection in the 21st century. And remember that libraries have the skills, they have the knowledge, they have the partners, and they have the locations to bring this idea to life of our community pod. So thank you everyone very much for your time, and please remember to pick the pod.
Thank you very much, Allison and Michelle. And while they pack away the pod, I will introduce John Whipple. John provides graphic design, counsel, and insight to imaginative organizations, large and small. He's a professional member of the Society of Graphic Designers of Canada. Please welcome John Whipple.
Yeah, that's going to take some doing following all of that, eh? I got more instruments here now. Don't start the timer. I've got 2 watches. I can keep track. I'm okay. So I'm here to talk to you about future for libraries. And the future that I'd like to talk to you about is one of many that's possible. And it's about, well, it's not about the building, it's not about libraries as repositories, it's not about indexes or any of that kind of thing. It's not about the digital divide that we heard about a little bit earlier. It's about having a space where scientist creators come together to make things that are significant. And these significant things can be ideas, they can be digital objects, they can be a physical artifact, and they're made in a diversity of form that reflects the desires of the people that requested them. And in doing this kind of thing, we can make tools that make us smarter or help us accomplish tasks or help us achieve goals and connect us to others. And although a thing may be significant only to the person that's requested it, if it gets shared around, it can live in the thoughts of other people and find a way in the community. So libraries, in that case, are makers of meaning. And it's an idea where we synthesize library and information science, the design professions of all kinds, experts in particular knowledge and opinion, teaching and learning, publishing and distribution, or any endeavor that we can call upon to help us make sense of something for somebody. And when we do that, when we make sense of something for someone, we create some meaning. So, what do you think is more meaningful to somebody trying to find out about what events and what's next after a diagnosis of a particular cancer? Do you think that it's a long list of websites and a longer list of books? Or is it a particular guide about what happens next after that diagnosis of cancer? Now, something like that must already exist in our collections. I'm sure that we are aware of websites that probably has this kind of information. But my point is not whether or not we already have that in our collections, but the fact that when that guide exists, it's the transformation of that information into a purposeful thing that unlocks the value of that information. It's the transformation of that data that can make, well, meaningful transformations to everyone. And to make things useful and meaningful means we have to synthesize a lot of elements into something probably bespoke or purpose-built. And traditionally in the world of information, that's the role of publishers. And publishers, they gather stuff, they edit it, they refine it, they package it all up nice, and then they sell it to their audience. But when it's an individual that's searching for a very specific thing in particular, in a particular place and time, there's a gap between the publisher and the person, because that information may exist in pieces across a multitude of places, or it may exist in one place, but it's not relevant to that person's time or context. So the way to fill that gap is to have the library transform this information for or along with the people that request it. Additionally, the explosion of internet and the web compromises our individual ability to sort things out, to identify authoritative sources, and to understand. And that state of affairs needs to change as well. And we need to recontextualize information that has been stripped of its context. And we do that by using design. Now, in all my years as a graphic designer, this is probably the best definition of design that I've ever seen. And it is really good because it really emphasizes making sense of things. And when we make sense of things, we go, yes, that's it. That's what I wanted, needed. That's what I knew that I needed to have. And that thing becomes meaningful to us. And so I'm proposing that, in a way, libraries become publishers, community-specific publishers, where information is gathered and transformed, a combination of makerspace, design studio, specialist analysts, all come together to create these items. And that is all that time I have. You know, I did this, I practiced this talk 4 different times with 4 different time results, so I didn't know it was going to happen. And I have 2 watches. They have different time on them. I really don't know what's going on. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, John. I can take that from you later. And thank you again to all the speakers this evening. Thank you. Consider my mind blown again. It's mind-blowing for a solid 2 months, really, and tonight is. So thank you very much. Okay, we're almost at break time and food time, but before we do that, really, really important. totally forgot to remind you to be writing down feedback, so I hope you've been doing that. And if you have, this is the time to tear it apart. And once we do break, as I mentioned, all the boxes are just on the right-hand side there, on the 2 tables. So please don't forget to put the feedback in the boxes, and then the speakers will be going home with those boxes, and all will be well. Okay, the other part is your voting ballot. You should all have one of this. Yes? Yes, good, excellent. Please vote for your top 3 favorite projects. I mentioned what criteria we used. You do not need to use those same criteria. You can use whatever you want, but please do it very quickly and write down, and we've got the numbers up here again, your 3 favorite projects, and put them in a voting box, which is now sitting up there on that table, before you go for break, because that's the time we are going to count your votes. So thank you. Provide feedback, vote, eat, come back here in about 20 minutes where we're going to announce the winners and wrap up. Thank you again. Welcome back. Okay, the votes are in. They have been counted. And it is my pleasure to ask President and CEO of the Vancouver Foundation, Faye Whiteman, to come up here and announce the winners. Please welcome Faye.
Oh, you're right. It's very tall. Do you really seriously have to stand on this? I guess so. Okay. Thank you, Baharak, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for making this night really, really exciting. It was such a fun evening to be here and to hear all the presenters. I've really enjoyed it. So you came, you listened, you voted, and it really is a pleasure for me to be able to announce the 3 ideas that you decided were the best and the brightest new ways for libraries to create a more connected and engaged community. We really heard some terrific ideas tonight. Some, I have to admit, are pretty far out, in fact, a little radical. Others are maybe a little more practical. But they do have, all of them have one thing in common. They challenge our ideas of what libraries are and what they can be, and they show creativity and vision, and I congratulate each and every one of the participants for their imagination. It says here now announce the 3 winners, but let me just keep the excitement going. So Vancouver Foundation is a community foundation, and as a community foundation, we're really excited to look at how we can help libraries expand their role in terms of building connections and communities and connections and engagement and build advanced civic engagement. Because we really do believe that libraries play an important role in connecting people and engaging people for the greater good. In fact, in our 70-year history, we've funded a number of initiatives in different libraries around the province. So I do want to let you know that there is some good news before I announce the winners, which is good news as well. So Vancouver Foundation is going to offer 2 grants in the area of between $5,000 and $10,000 to help pilot 2 of the ideas. And all 10 of the tonight's presenters, except for Justin, because, you were advocating illegal stuff. And the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of BC sits on our board. And, I don't know, Justin. Not sure that one's going to fly. But, on the other hand, we've done some pretty wild and wacky things that we funded. So we're asking all 10 of the participants to please apply to us for the funds. I'm not going to go through all the details of tonight, but just to say, please watch our website, because it'll only be open to the 10 of you. And we'll choose 2 of you based on what we're looking at and provide you with some seed funding to get your project going. So that's we're thrilled about doing that. Okay, so I kind of feel like there should be a drum roll or something, but great voting, all of you. I mean, there was such an even distribution of voting right across all of the projects, which is really exciting because it talks a lot about each one of them and the merit of each one of them. But of course, in any competition, there has to be, the top ones that are going to get that honor. So there was a tie for the two projects that received the most votes. So I am pleased to tell you that Tara Robertson, Creating Connections Through Digitization, is number one winner. Tara, do you want me to speak on your behalf, thanking her mother, her father, her extended family, her high school teacher? And the second winner with number one that had the most votes was Shirley Liu. Library is open. So the project that received the second highest votes, Alison Campbell and Michelle Callahan, Community Pods. And the project that received the third vote, What Would Any Community Be Without Moocs? Kevin Stranack, Facilitating Participatory Communities. So thank you, all of you. It really has been a terrific evening. We are really excited to receive the applications from all of you. It doesn't matter whether you were in the first, second, or third. All 10 of you are eligible to receive the seed funding, and we look forward to receiving your application. It makes me think about the publisher Malcolm Forbes, who said that the richest person in the world can't provide you with anything like the endless, incredible loot available at your local library. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Faye, for that very exciting announcement. And can we just applaud the 10 speakers and 10 presentations again? Thank you. 13 speakers, 10 presentations. And now to close the festivities, Chuck Ekman.
Thank you all for coming out on this sweltering evening. I want to thank the event co-sponsors. I want to thank the Vancouver Foundation for the surprise and delightful announcement about continuing this initiative. And thanks very much again to the speakers, to all of the members of the jury, to the staff who pulled this together, to Bahrak. And thank you again for coming out this evening. And Andrew gave the plug for the further events in the SFU Public Square series for the rest of the week. Please check your packets and find something there that appeals to you, more than one, and have a great evening.
We want to say a big thank you to the librarian community. You guys have come out, you women, you men, you have come out in incredible numbers. We have one favor to ask of you. Last night, we previewed for the first time a video called the One Voice video. If I could put it up here, I would try. And if I had somebody that wasn't quite as much of a Luddite as I was, I would try and get it up there because it's on our SFU Public Square website. You have in your program a little overview of that. As librarian lovers, as librarians, as library lovers, I'm going to ask you to try and help us get the word out about this video. A whole number of musicians put their time and love and energy into it. Did anyone see it last night? What do you think? Yeah, it was pretty amazing. So please help us spread the word. If you can go back, Twitter, put it on your Facebook, send it out on email, put it up on your websites. If you could put a link to the video, we'd really appreciate it. Please join us at some of our other events. And again, a big thank you to all of you.